Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Monday Night Therapy. I'm your host, Minnie Hunt, here to bring some positive vibes to Husker sports. Although, this week, Todd, I don't know. I don't have to really look for the silver lining. We have a lot of silver lining, don't we?
Yeah, it's been a heck of a week. Yeah, I mean, you kind of think about it. The first bit of news that I'm thinking of, we get told at about 10 o'clock in the morning that John Cook's retiring, and then we didn't even have any time to, recover from being astonished. And then boom, Danny Boosman Kelly is the new coach. I mean, so we went right from, oh my God, to, oh, hey, we're in good shape. So yeah, it's just been a crazy week, but
15 minutes later, 15 minutes. And I just think, oh my goodness, you think that was planned?
Oh, yeah. This has been in the works for quite a while, the way it sounds. So,
how excited are you about this?
Well, I am excited. I mean, the reality is John Cook's been the coach at Nebraska for 25 years. He's in my opinion, he's on the Mount Rushmore of Nebraska coaches. I think most people probably would think that. And he's 68 years old. So there comes a point in everybody's life when you say enough is enough, and it sounds like he really took his time reflecting at the end of the year, and he decided it's time to move on. And I know that he'd had some conversations with Danny Busboom Kelly, former player, former assistant coach, and she had informed him that she had it written into her contract that when she renegotiated her contract, that if the Nebraska job opened up, she wanted to be free to pursue it. So, I guess it was meant to be. And well, it'll be tough to see John Cook move on, but I'm not a avid volleyball player. I watch it quite a bit, but she can coach. She can coach.
Oh, obviously. She has a great track record. Yeah, we did talk about that a little bit on Thursday. Well, quite a bit actually, for about an hour. Beth came on, and so that was really great. And tonight we have numero uno, James Boardman, joining us. And since I think he started to name off games, Parker Brother games, Pitt Snipe Husker goes Yahtzee, so he's second. And then again, James Boardman with Sorry. 3 of my favorite games.
3 games I know how to play.
Yeah. I don't like it whenever they start throwing in different rules on Uno. Like, I know how to play the one way, and that's it. Don't get me the other games.
It seems like families have their own rules. Parts of the country have their own rules.
What about Monopoly? Do you like Monopoly?
I have never had the patience to make it all the way through a game. I'll play until somebody says, "Okay, we're done." But
okay, so what is your take on free parking? Do you get it when you land on the corner space? Like, is all the money put in the pile in the center?
No, I think you get it when you draw the card, right? No, I don't know.
I think you win almost like the lottery when you land on free parking. That's how I think you should play it. Well, anyways. Okay, so tonight, yes, we have had huge news. We don't want to talk about games. We are now the number 5 ranked transfer portal class in the country, behind LSU, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, and Auburn.
Matt Rhule does a nice job. I heard a talking head today says that there are very few people in the country that do it better from January to July than Matt Rhule, And I know that's kind of tongue in cheek and sarcastic, but he's got it figured out. And he and his staff, I think, worked very, very hard in the portal and trying to protect against mistakes. And hopefully the people they're bringing in are going to, be solid contributors.
Yeah. So we got news this weekend that Rocco Spindler is official. He is a Husker. We knew he had registered for classes or been registered for Nebraska, but we didn't know whether or not for sure he was going to come because he still had other visits. And he had, I think, Michigan. Well, I know Virginia was in there, and Virginia was offering him, I heard, like $1 million to come and play. So somehow we beat out all these other schools, and he's coming to Nebraska.
I think the best thing about that, Minnie, is it'll be fun to cheer for a guy named Rocco.
Rocco.
Yeah, that's a Jersey name or an East Coast name. And Iowa State's had a quarterback over there named Rocco Brecht the last few years, but geez, Rocco. I mean, that's a lineman name. That's a either a lineman or a gangster. I'm not sure, but boy, when you look at him, he's 6'4", 6'5", and 325, 335. I mean, there's a big hunk of Rocco there. I mean, good looking guy, it seems like.
Yeah, and he started in 23 games at Notre Dame. So he has tons of experience on the offensive line. And between him and Elijah Pritchett, probably right tackle Elijah Pritchett, and then he'll probably play inside lineman, right side also. So that whole side's going to be new.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious how it's all going to shake out. But they're not bringing in a guy like Rocco Spindler, and they're not bringing in Pritchett to provide depth. I mean, the expectation is that those guys are going to play. And, I wonder, it's going to be interesting in the spring because a lot, the offensive linemen, all the young offensive linemen are going to have a chance to show what they can do. It doesn't sound like, the two tackles, Corcoran and Prochazka. I mean, Prochazka maybe, but it doesn't sound like those guys are going to be, working out in the spring. So it's going to give these other guys a chance. The one that I'm really curious about, the offensive lineman. Well, I'm a little curious about what's going to happen at center. Whether they're going to move Evans to center, but I'm really curious what's going to end up happening with the kid from Mount Pleasant, Iowa, Lotovsky. I wonder if he's going to stay at a guard position or if they're going to move him out to tackle. I've heard a little bit of that, but who knows? I mean, it's going to be. I think the coaching staff has done what it needs to do to upgrade the offensive line. I think the offensive line is going to be up a notch this year over last year.
Yeah, I think. Okay, so I was following the injury list for spring practices, and right now, the way it looks is we have 4 offensive linemen that are recovering from surgeries. Still, we have Turner Corcoran, Teddy Prochazka, Henry Lotovsky, and Gunner Gottula.
Yep.
So, Rhule brought up that there's spring game's probably going to get canceled. And, it kills me because I don't know what I'm going to do in April now. But the good thing about it is how many guys do we get injured in those spring games? I mean, every year we have somebody injured.
Last year they had 2 guys that had torn ACLs, and Demetrius Bell still hasn't come back. There's going to be some kind of football on the 28th of April, and it won't be a full-fledged spring game. They're talking. I've heard quite a few people having some conversations. there will be something. And they're looking at ways to kind of combine it with, some other things that are going on. More of a celebration, fan day, family day, kid day, whatever. I think that we're going to be able to see them pop pads a little bit, but it's not going to be 4 quarters of football. We don't, they cut that roster down, and it's still, people can sit there and say, well, that's 105 players. Well, there's still 130 some players that will be on the roster in spring. They don't have to be down to 105 until August. But even with that, you're investing some money now where you weren't investing. Well, you're investing a lot more money in some players, and to get them bunged up in a meaningless exhibition game, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I was never, I'm different. I am different, but
really,
John had to drag me kicking and screaming to the spring game about, I don't know, 3 years ago, probably 2-3 years. I hadn't been to the spring game since I was in college, and it's never been. That's baseball season. I'm doing baseball, but for some Nebraska, it's really kind of interesting because there are Nebraska families that is a major family event for them. And I kind of get it. It's a way to take your kids to the football game, football stadium, enjoy that experience a lot cheaper than it is on a Saturday in the fall. So,
yeah. James Boardman says Nebraska baseball's on the road at Maryland the weekend of the spring game. I saw that too. I liked how they tried to coordinate everything together last season, so everybody could attend the things that they wanted to. Yeah. And I mean, now baseball's out. So, and they said that whatever they do, they're not going to televise.
Well, that's something else that I heard Matt Rhule was concerned about is why he said, in essence, he says, why do we want to put our kids on film for other programs to see? I had never thought about this, and I hadn't even heard it until this week where he was quoted as saying something along the line that after last year's game, there were quite a few of the players that fielded some calls from other programs, after the spring game was televised last year. So it's a new world. And I guess this is one of those things that we're going to have to get used to a little bit.
For sure. Yeah, it is. And, I think that Nebraska has started something that other schools are definitely going to follow. I'm surprised we haven't heard any yet that have decided to cancel it for the same reason.
Well, not that they're the gold standard by any means, but
no.
Iowa hasn't played a spring game for years. And, yeah.
Okay. Oh, Pitt Snipe says UCF has canceled it as well. Yeah. So our buddy Scott Frost down there. Okay. Well, yeah. So we have Rocco Spindler coming in, and he'll be at spring practices. And we have Elijah Pritchett as well, also at spring practices. Hopefully we'll get to see some things. That's what I feel like, the way that Matt Rhule is taking things, he has definitely shut down so much of the access that the media has had to the football team and watching them. And things are a lot more hush hush. And I think it is because of the dynamics with college football these days and the rules that the NCAA have allowed.
Well, yeah. I don't think most college football coaches really ever liked the idea of opening the doors wide open. They've always been they've always been control freaks. Now, Matt Rhule doesn't seem to mind talking to the media. Seems to me he enjoys it, and he's probably made himself, quite honestly, of any of the head football coaches that I ever remember at Nebraska, you hear a lot more from him, and he says a lot more, and he goes beyond, just the cliches and coach speak and that kind of stuff. So from that standpoint, I really enjoy it.
I do too. And I hope that we get to see some of that through spring. I mean, geez, could you imagine if we don't hear anything or see anything until what, the beginning of the season? I think
Oh,
we'd kill each other. I think we would just be so angry. This is like we're drug addicts or something.
It drives Nebraska football drives the economy, so
Yeah.
we'll hear something.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So James Boardman says no TV will help get people to the stadium if it's a fun day event. It will. Yeah, it will.
And I think they'll make it a fun event. I don't know what it's going to look like, but Nebraska, it seems to me that Nebraska has some people on the payroll there that are out of the box thinkers, and
Right.
they do their fan fests up right. I mean, well, okay, so on Thursday they're having a welcome party for the new volleyball coach. I've never heard of that happening. I mean, they're opening up Devaney at 2:00 on Thursday to welcome Danny Busby
Awesome.
to Nebraska.
That
So
is so great.
yeah, there's people that I'm not going to say it's going to whatever they do is going to be a substitute for that game, but I think people will get something out of it.
I hope so. I mean, even if it's not televised, they can't keep the media out. We're always in there, and even though they tell us not to record it or whatever, you still see recordings. I mean, even last season, they tried that with the what was that game that they did? They did like some sort of um, open practice. That's what it was. They did an open practice. Media was on the field, and they did say that they were not supposed to be recording. However, I saw all kinds of footage from that.
Well,
So I don't know how you keep that kind of like locked down.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
something will come. I mean, they want to publicize it, so
Yeah.
yeah, we'll know what's happening.
Yeah. MK says a multi-sport paintball competition at Memorial. That's an idea. That is an idea.
Yeah,
Well, anything to do with
keep
football.
laugh in the crowd.
Oh, I don't know. Well, that would be interesting. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see if anything else has to talk about. Okay. MK says, whenever I hear Rocco, it reminds me of a landscaping rock in Omaha that takes out cars. It has quite an interesting following. Oh,
I have no idea what that refers to, MK.
I don't either, but I think I want to start following them. You'll have to tell us a little more about that, MK. And then James Boardman came in with Virginia offered Spindler $1.5 million. What?
Yeah,
This is insane money.
Yeah, I just don't compute, so I don't know.
Do you think there's any like rules that are going to be coming in having to do with this anytime soon? I mean, this is crazy money for kids.
Yeah.
Why would you want to even go to the NFL at this point?
I don't know. There are so many things that would have to happen. There need to be rules, and I don't think there's anybody out there that disagrees that there shouldn't be rules. But one, who's the governing body that's going to do it? Because the NCAA doesn't, they don't have any authority. So who's going to do it, and what's it going to look like? There's a lot of people that have ideas. I've been told you can't cap anything unless you have contracts, and if schools or conferences or whatever just arbitrarily say we're capping the amount we pay players at X dollars, you'll have lawsuits before you even, the ink even dries on that. So I don't understand. all the labor laws and labor rules, but what I've heard people say, and I've heard it more than once, is that the best way to have some kind of control over this is if they organize the players and if you have contracts, and in the contracts you can spell out all the stipulations. And so I don't know where it's headed.
Okay, so that's interesting because was it Tennessee? No, Kentucky had a player on their roster who was 17 years old. He's not even an adult. So how can a 17-year-old kid sign a contract?
Well, he can't. And that will be another issue when it comes to recruiting time, because, a lot of those kids make commitments. And so, it would come down to their parents, signing a contract for them. And, wouldn't that get dicey?
Ooh, yeah. Husker Chuck has a good point here. He says conferences have to work together to enforce a salary cap. I mean, that in the ideal world, that would happen. But then you have these conferences that, or not conferences, but these schools like Ohio State that are willing to go in a negative deficit because there's money in their coffers, to win a national championship.
Yeah. They're all going to have to come to the table. And I don't know how they're going to get there. In my opinion, it's going to be leadership from the Big Ten and leadership from the SEC that are going to be the ones that are going to have to take the initiative to get the ball rolling. Leave Congress out of this; they'll screw it up. But that's the only way that something's going to happen, where there's going to be some kind of sanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is insane. That we can definitely agree on. I think every fan can even agree on that.
Yeah.
So, it's a good question. Husker Chuck asks, if they can't enforce a salary cap, how do they limit rosters to 105?
Well, that is the NCAA does have the authority on that, and I would guess they have the authority to set the size of rosters, because it's not a financial transaction. Now, you can say that you're costing kids, players 106, 107, 108, you're costing them income, but not when you set in a parameter that you're only going to allow 105 players on a team. A fire department doesn't have an unlimited number of firefighters. A fire department decides how many employees they're going to have. Any company decides how many employees. So you can restrict the number. But when you start talking about money changing hands, that's where things get a little sticky.
Yeah. Okay. One more on this, just because this is interesting. Chris Holloman, welcome. He says, conferences working together is collusion. That's a lawsuit for sure.
Okay, so yeah, by terminology, it would be. But the conferences have worked together in a lot of different ways. Now, there's been conversation about the Big Ten and the SEC breaking away for this, super conference or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And will there be lawsuits if that happens? Yeah, there will. But I guess the point that I was trying to make is that the NCAA I don't think the NCAA has the strength to lead college football at the Division I level anymore. They don't. In fact, they're out. They're not a factor. And so who are the networks? Are the networks going to pull this together? And are they the ones that are going to make decisions about salary caps and NIL? No, they're not. So it's got to be from within. And who would that be other than your conference commissioners, maybe some of your stronger presidents?
Are you looking for a job, Todd?
Not right now. No, I don't understand finance. So there are people I think in the comments that know a lot more about this stuff than I do. So, I'm just trying to stay on the surface.
Okay. Same. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do what you do best. Let's take a look. This is Rocco Spindler. Now, that doesn't really show you a good look at the lad's offensive derriere.
Well, here's the thing about Rocco Spindler. When I saw him play in here's what I saw in the national championship game. Notre Dame had massive players. I mean, across the board, they had big, stout players. There's definitely, they've recruited well, and their strength program really focuses on the core for those guys. Now, you just looking at that picture right there, that's a big man. And that's 325 pounds, but I don't see a gut hanging down over his waistband. I don't see, he's just a big stout kid, and it kind of looks like he's developed his core a bit, and he's probably a really good, strong player.
So James Boardman is asking for a Badonk rating.
Yeah. No, he's
well on a scale from 1 to 10. And being the best.
I can't see. To judge the Badonk, you got to be able to see at least mid-thigh to see how thick they are.
All right. Well, judging from the rest of his body, it's probably a pretty hefty Badonk. Sturdy Badonk.
Yep. Well, he likes to run block, and that's what Matt Rhule wants. He wants some road graders out there because they want to have a power running game, and then let Dana Holgorsen just drive defenses nuts, zipping it here, zipping it there, wherever Dylan can find an open receiver.
I know. This is going to be so exciting. I can't wait to see what Dana Holgorsen puts together and what our running game ends up looking like now.
Yep. No doubt.
So exciting. Vince wants to know, Minnie, where does he rank in the stalker scale? Oh, I don't know yet. We'll have to see. I'm kind of with Todd on this one. We will see for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get him off. So glad he's a Husker. Welcome, Rocco. And we will be looking for you. So we talked about the offensive line, how we definitely needed to add at least one more player. So that's great, especially because we have so many injuries right now and just got to have those guys.
Yeah.
We have Sam Sledge, who is not injured. I wonder how he would look at center. Didn't he play center a couple times?
He's going to definitely have a chance. I mean, he's going to have a chance to show what he can do. And, he may be the guy that comes out. I personally think that it's going to depend upon what they decide to do. How do I want to say this? With the addition of Spindler, what are they going to do? What does Lotovsky end up doing? And what Lotovsky's going to end up doing is going to depend upon the health with the tackles. And so I think if they can move Evans into center, they will. But if they need to leave Evans at guard, then I think that's where Sledge is going to come in.
Yeah. So that's what I was thinking too. Yes. Whew. I'm so excited about it, though. I can't wait. But now we also have other great news. Amazing news, actually. Probably some of the best news that we've heard in a long time. And Dana Williams joins us on Facebook, and he says, looks like special teams might be special next season. And that's because of this guy. Mark Eckler from Tennessee is our new special teams coach. And he's no stranger to Nebraska. He actually was a linebackers coach under Bo Pelini. Now, every single picture I've seen of this guy, he is yelling like that.
Have you seen his picture when he was playing at K-State, where he's got the eye black smeared all over his face?
No.
Oh my
No.
gosh. No.
He was the linebacker there, right?
Yeah, he was. He played high school, I think, up at Blair. This is a surprisingly good pickup for Nebraska. I don't know, I don't know if Rhule was kind of deflecting or if he was just kind of playing some games with the media or whatever, but just 2 or 3 days ago, he's saying, we're going to move forward with the special teams coach. Our focus has been on the portal. We wanted to put all of our energy in there and get the players. That was priority number one. We've interviewed a few people. It's probably not going to be, we're probably going to hire more of an analyst to run the show, and won't be a recruiting position. And then boom, they hired Eckler. And Eckler is every bit as good of a recruiter as he is an on-field coach. So I don't know if Rhule was just throwing up smoke signals or what the deal was, but I can't imagine that he'll be in a non-recruiting position. I mean, he's amazing. And when he was, coaching linebackers at Nebraska, he was the one that was bringing in, he was the one that was bringing in the dudes. I mean, he's good. And he can obviously coach special teams. Tennessee's had outstanding special teams the last few years.
They certainly have. And, not to rehash what we've been through, but we'll go ahead and do that. Let's see here. Nebraska had 73 yards last season on return on punts. And we had 10 blocked kicks and 4 blocked punts. Tennessee in 2024, they fielded 27 punts and returned them for 424 yards compared to our 73 yards. Oh my gosh. And over 4 years, they only allowed 1 blocked kick. 1. I mean, I just can't even imagine. All those blocked kicks, I could have won us games.
The block kicks were incredible that we had so many of them this year. Mm-hmm. And we continued to have blocked kicks.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm excited about having him on board. I'm always a little bit. There's always a little trepidation when I want to say some things that I think are above me and my skill level, but mm-hmm. I've been told, and by coaches, that I've had opportunity to talk to, that special teams is kind of like rebounding in basketball. It's want to, it's attitude, mm-hmm. It takes special guys to play special teams, and It isn't like Nebraska didn't have some of the starters out on the field. But I'm really encouraged to see what Eckler is able to do with the Cornhuskers next year.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. James Boardman comes in and he says he will bring more fire to the field this year than any player. I mean, you guys probably remember seeing him coach.
Yeah, he was an excitable guy.
Yeah.
A lot of those flying chest bumps. When something big would happen on the field and the player would come off, he'd meet him and get and chest jump and chest bump, and sometimes he'd get knocked backwards and sometimes he'd hold it to a stalemate. But
oh my gosh, that's so funny.
He's intense, he's fiery, but he's not an asshole. I mean, there are fiery assholes out there, and
yeah,
he's not like that. He's just really wound up and excitable.
So I found the picture you were talking about.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that the one? Now this is him at Kansas State. So he was a linebacker, and this guy looks mean.
Does he look like a linebacker? I mean, holy moly.
No, he looks like I mean, honestly, I don't know. He kind of like somebody I'd see in my nightmares. You don't want to meet him down a dark alley. Yeah. That's intense.
Kind of like Mad Max. Mad Max, from Thunderdome or something like that. Yeah, Steven.
He says, did you see that? He says, Stephen Fromm says that's the same face he makes for his driver's license. I hope not. Oh my goodness.
The special teams can't go anywhere but up. And
we are like the worst in almost everything, or next to worst.
And Minnie, you said earlier, cost us games. Special teams have cost us games for years. That's got to end.
It's got to end. And I think they found the answer.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Vince Watson has a question for you, Todd. He says, Todd, is special ed still at Nebraska in the fall in some capacity? If so, what do you see him doing?
Well, Ed Foley was he was an assistant with Rhule at a couple other stops. And boy, I don't remember, and I'm not good enough to check on my laptop while I'm talking. I don't think he was a special teams coach. I think he coached a different position group. So I think that Ed and Matt have a really strong bond, a very strong connection, and he'll serve as an analyst in some kind of capacity. He'll be somebody that whatever area of expertise his is, he'll break down film, he'll review, he'll do that analyst job. I think the guy was pretty well liked out and about in Nebraska. I mean, he was the one that was, stopping in the coffee shops and saying howdy to people in the small school. I think he'll kind of still be that ambassador type that will get out and about.
I mean, I can't say anything bad about him. I love the guy. He loves Nebraska. I mean, anybody that has that much passion for Nebraska and wants to get out there and shake hands, meet people, just get into high schools and see other kids. I think he is just wonderful. But do you know? Okay, so I thought he was kind of an older guy. He's only 57 years old.
Yeah, he's younger than me.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so they met each other, I think, when they were in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Temple. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Ed Foley has kind of followed him throughout, and he went down to Baylor and was like the assistant head coach or something like that for a year or two. So he's definitely helped Matt Rhule along his entire career. So I think you're right. He'll be involved in some capacity.
Well, in some capacity as well, and he will. And I think Nebraska also probably has the highest paid tight ends coach in the country. So Satterfield's going to be around for a year because of that contract he's got. But yeah, Foley will be doing something. I mean, the world of college football has changed so much in the last 18 to 24 months. I mean, unlimited coaches, basically unlimited coaches. And boy, it used to be, that was, I love that. That was, they had a pretty tight rein on that. So
I kind of like it. I don't know. How do you feel? Unlimited coaches.
Yeah, if you have more coaches, that's better for the players. But that's a rabbit hole. I can get way, way, way too philosophical for that. I am totally bothered by the professionalization of college sports. It just drives me. Why do we need all of those coaches? For years and years, college football
business
with fewer. So. But the money's there, and people think that they have to spend the money. So,
well, I also think that it's a business. There's that part that we're like, okay, this is a game, and they're young men, but then you also realize this is a very lucrative business, and people are getting very wealthy from this, and you have to prepare these kids up. Not only that, the head coach is pulled in so many different ways, they can't hardly coach football anymore.
I'm not sure that they get to coach very much football anymore. Yeah. That's why I think we've seen that's one of the reasons I think some of the head coaches have left. But I also think it's why we've seen people like Chip Kelly, who left, he gave up being a head coach. And so he was he was offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Now he's going to the Raiders. Oh my!
I know. I know.
But,
what was it? Six something million? What was that amount?
But Dana Holgorsen seems to be. I mean, he signed a 2-year contract to be an offensive coordinator. Cliff Kingsbury, with the Washington Commanders.
Yes.
He was mentioned for a lot of NFL head coaching jobs, and he says, I got Jaden Daniels here. I'm good. I don't have to deal with all that head coach crap. I'm good being an offensive coordinator. So, I don't know. Maybe people are starting to rethink some of that a little bit.
Yeah. Because you have to think. You're always going to make money in this industry.
Yeah.
But you got to think of why you actually what your passion is, your why. James Boardman actually came in with some great stats. Thank you, James. He says for special teams, punt returns last year, Nebraska ranked 110th with 15 returns for 4.87 yards. And Tennessee ranked 9th with 27 returns for 15.7 yards and a touchdown.
Well, and you do the difference. That's a first down. So Tennessee averaged, a first down more, one more first down. I'm not saying that so it makes sense, but
no, I understand what you're saying.
So that's
we didn't get any. It's like we didn't get any first downs.
No.
And that's the job of the special teams. You got to get a first down.
Yeah.
You got to. And it's like we got 0.
And, in my mind, because I do pay attention to the gunners, those are the outside guys that are running down to cover punts. I do pay a lot of attention to that when I'm in the field, in the stadium, and you can see the whole field. And it just astonishes me that the opposing team never seemed to be slowed down. It didn't seem like our defenders on punt return ever slowed the gunners down to give our guy a chance to make the catch and at least take that initial step. Because if you have the right guy back there, Ja'Cory Barney, if he's the one who's fielding punts, all he needs, man, he puts his foot in the dirt once and boom, he can be gone.
Yeah.
So I'm anxious to see somebody make improvement there. I mean, God, Iowa has had 2 elite punt returners in a row. And that's because they've had good special teams coaching and they've had the right players on special teams that make it work. Cooper DeJean, who's playing in the Super Bowl, he was amazing. And then they had this kid from Williamsburg I mean,
Yeah.
It's want to. It's want to.
I totally agree. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so good for Nebraska. All right, I don't know which way to go first because we've covered so many different topics and there's a lot of great, awesome comments, guys. Keep them coming. Okay, we'll just do this. James Borman said, this is the other, somebody asked for this stat. Nebraska was blocked on punts and field goals 10 times last year. Tennessee was blocked once in 4 years. And I think I said that, maybe I didn't say it very clearly, but 10 times in one season. And over 4 years, Tennessee has had 1.
10 times seems like a hell of a lot. A lot.
It's almost like I was out there.
I don't know. That's yeah.
There's something going on there. Something really wrong. Almost like they weren't being coached on that. So, okay. Let's see here. All right. Pit Snipe Husker says the NCAA had 14 battalions doing nothing but looking at who's coaching who and when, and is there a ball in the room?
That's and Pit Snipe has hit on something that I think is relevant. Yes, I mean it used to be with the rules enforcement, the NCAA. I mean they were breathing down everybody's neck, and if you had a person that wasn't supposed to be doing any coaching and was coaching when they shouldn't have been, I mean it was like, oh my God, that's a violation or whatever. And so maybe they just said it's unenforceable, the hell with it, just let it go. Maybe that's what they've decided.
I mean, maybe it has something to do with all of the lawsuits that keep coming up and they have to go back and change the rule. And, the rules that they thought they could have and keep get overturned in other courts. So it's hard actually to govern anything when you can't, your hands are tied.
Minnie, it's become, as you have said, it's become a business. And who's going to tell Exxon that they have to stop hiring managers? Who's going to tell AT&T you got to I mean there's no one to tell them, and that's in essence what's happened with college sports. There's no one to tell them. I won't say college sports again. College football is its own beast.
It is.
College volleyball does not have unlimited coaches. Okay? College wrestling does not have unlimited coaches.
Really?
College football does not have unlimited coaches.
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
It's just to take just a step to last week when John Cook retired, Reyes and Kelly Hunter, is it Justin and Jordan Reyes and Hunter, those two assistants are staying. And so there's one assistant position open. So, you got a head coach and you get 3 full-time assistants in volleyball. So football is its own animal. And I think there is something to be said at the Division I level, just cut it loose. Just quit pretending. Quit pretending that the NCAA has any authority over it.
I mean, I actually like that idea. And Husker Chuck here says, before it was a business, it was all about pride of a school or a state. I mean, if they were to cut it loose and let it be its own thing, maybe it would revert back to that.
Who knows? But I don't know if Husker Chuck is as gray as I am, but that's why I fell in love with college sports, because it was about pride in your school. It was about pride in your state. And, I've told my story before. I grew up in Iowa. My mom and dad both went to Iowa State. I went to my first Iowa State game in 1969 when I was 6 years old. And I died for Iowa State. I mean, and I was so proud of being a Cyclone, even though, man, they had some miserable years. But that's the same way that I became when I was at Nebraska. And I maybe put it in another perspective, and maybe this is kind of corny, but, in my professional life, I was a teacher and an administrator at 5 different schools in Iowa. And, when I was a kid and grew up and went to high school, I graduated in Oakland Yellow Jacket. And, I'm still an Oakland Yellow Jacket, and I always will be, even though the Oakland Yellow Jackets aren't around anymore. They're the Riverside Bulldogs. But I'll always be an Oakland Yellow Jacket. But, my first teaching job was at Galva-Holstein, and they were the Pirates. And I was a Galva-Holstein Pirate. And then I went on and I became a Sheraton Charger. And then I was a Wall Lakeview Auburn Wolverine. And then I was a Creston Panther, and I finished up as a North Fayette Valley Tiger Hawk. And, you identify, you develop that sense of connection.
Yeah.
And there are so many Nebraskans that, generations of Nebraskans that follow this football team because of their loyalty and their pride in the programs. And I think it's because of that it's hard for a lot of us to accept this business that college football, especially college athletics, has become. A lot of people don't have some people don't have a problem at all taking that leap. But I think there's a lot of people that do struggle with that.
You brought up a interesting point. I'm curious to know when you guys became Husker fans. If you could, if you don't mind putting in the year, that would be awesome. So we kind of get a sense of, because you all know that I'm probably the newest fan there is. But that's one of the reasons why I love it, is exactly what you're saying. How much pride there is in Nebraska for football. I think it's simply, I just love it. It's like a romantic story for me. Stephen Fromm says, well, it was always a business. We don't know how much shady stuff Oklahoma, Texas, and a lot of these schools were doing behind doors.
There's truth to that. But we've gone from Smith's Five and Dime to international corporations.
It's true. It's true. And have you noticed that all these players are now having their own businesses?
Yeah.
Like they have their own brand, and then they'll have like their own charities as well because of the money that they're making.
Yeah.
It's insane what is going on right now. Right. So, yeah. Okay, well, let's see. Let me catch up on. Oh, wonderful. People actually did answer. Hey, James Boardman, 1975. So he's been a fan for 50 years. 50 years. Matt Rhule just turned 50 just last week, in fact. JC, 1979. That's awesome. And Husker Chuck says, my first memory is 1970 season Orange Bowl versus LSU. Now, didn't we win a national championship in 1972?
Yeah, and I think that was against Alabama. Some of these people can remember that. I remember the Nebraska Alabama Orange Bowl. Gosh, was that? Okay, I've got to find out if that was Nebraska and Alabama.
Okay, so you're going to Greggle it.
1972 Orange Bowl, Nebraska, Alabama. And okay, so I told you I was an Iowa Stater when I grew up.
Yes.
For the 1972 Orange Bowl, I was in fourth grade, Mrs. Frankson's fourth grade class at Hoover Elementary School in Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Uh-huh.
I hated Nebraska. I hated Nebraska.
Oh.
Mrs. Frankson was this 5'0" little old lady teacher, that used to roll her hair and braids around her head, just an old school marm. And she was stern. She was really, really stern. But from the time that they announced that Nebraska was going to play Alabama in the Orange Bowl, on all of my tablet paper, my notebook paper, in the top right-hand corner in red pencil, I wrote Alabama #1, Alabama #1. I wrote that on every piece of notebook paper. I had all of my pieces of notebook paper. So I had my Alabama #1 stationery. Okay. And so then, of course, we were on winter break. We were on Christmas break when the national championship game was being played. And Nebraska beat Alabama, national champions. And when I went back to school, and my mom saved this, Mrs. Frankson had corrected some of our work over Christmas break, and she handed it back. And on every one of my pieces, maybe half a dozen sheets of paper, she'd circled that Alabama #1 and drew a little arrow, and she had a smiley face and said, "Not anymore." That's what she wrote on every. And Mrs. Frankson, I never, ever, ever, ever would have thought that she even knew what football was, let alone paid attention.
Oh, that is so great.
My mom did that out of a box for me, about 4 or 5 years ago. So, yeah.
I love that. I love it, love it, love it. That is so awesome. Little Todd.
Yeah, little Todd. Then he was converted.
Thank goodness you changed your ways.
Yeah,
Look at you now. Look at you now.
Look at me now.
Vince Watton, 1974, was born a Husker. Yes. I love that too. MK, 79-80 season. Diamond Dave, 1972.
72.
And I actually know how Diamond Dave became a fan. His dad had moved him to Omaha from Phoenix, actually. And his sister told me that Frosty Anderson was the quarterback then, and he came into their school and passed around his helmet for all the kids to kind of hold, and he was there to talk to the kids. I thought that's such a great story. I'll never forget Frosty Anderson because of that. Stephen Hubbard, 1961. Ooh.
Stephen, were you born in 61, or is that when you became aware of the?
Wow.
I'm a child of 1961.
Are you too? Okay. And Pitt Snipe, Husker, 1973. Wow. Dana Williams from Facebook, 1973, when we moved there.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You guys, you have some stories, I am sure. That is just, I love that. I mean, they have such, I want to, you know what? Maybe one of these days I can get somebody from the chat to come on and tell some of these stories of like what you were sharing, Todd.
You've got a lot of people on here tonight that I'm sure can tell. You can sure tell some stories here. I'm not sure I'm going to listen to Husker Chuck talk about the 1982 Penn State game because
You see
I don't
that?
know that I can listen to that again.
Mm. So we hate Penn State too because of that.
Yeah.
Okay, Stephen Hubbard, he clarifies he was born in
Okay.
54.
All right.
Yeah. Well, okay. So lastly, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the men's basketball because last week we had Jarek Shearer on, and he told us that we were on a 6-game losing streak and that we probably were going to lose to Illinois at home. And guess what? We pulled it out in overtime. And we kicked some Illinois butt. Finally, 80-74. And so they were ranked number 17 going into that game. And then this weekend, we beat number 16 ranked Oregon 77-71. So it's our 4th win against a ranked team. It looks like we're kind of like on an upswing now. Let's hope.
Let's hope. Well, at least they're back in the conversation for possibly getting into the tournament,
Yeah.
Because I think most people, and again, I'm not the best Nebraska basketball fan, but I think most people have pretty much said, "Oh, well, season's over." So good on them.
Wash your hands of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Good for them. Let's keep this going.
Yeah.
Well, Todd, you have been, as usual, a spectacular guest. I love your story. And I know you wanted to say something about another sport coming up soon.
Well, we are roughly a week away from the start of week and a half away from the start of the baseball season. Nebraska is going to open down in your stomping grounds, Minnie. They're going to be down in the Phoenix area. They open the season down there with playing some good teams. We're excited. Aaron and I, Rostovsky, we're really excited about covering the team again this year. And Andy Ketterson is, and probably his daughter Miley, I'm not sure, but I think both of them will be covering the softball team this year. So we're excited, to get the bat and ball sports going here a little bit. So I'm going to be going down to Texas for the 3rd weekend of the season and covering the team down there. So I always look forward to that.
How do we look so far? Oh, James just said we're ranked
24.
Number 24th, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, actually Nebraska could put the same team out on the field this year as they did last year. I mean, they have everybody back except their top pitcher and some role players, but they've also got to improve over last year. And I think they will. I think they've added some pitching. I think they've added some depth. But they're playing an incredibly tough schedule. I mean, just an absolutely incredibly tough schedule. So, they may not, they may have a few more L's in that column than what we want to see, but it all counts with the RPI. So we'll see how good they are.
Oh, this will be exciting then. Well, I just realized there were a couple starred comments. Oh, that's one of them. Yep. Paul asks, Todd, what do you think of Nebraska baseball team this year? Are you going to Frisco, Texas to watch Nebraska versus LSU?
Yep, that's one I'm looking forward to. I'm really I love LSU. I love watching. The LSU fans are just absolutely insane. So I'm really looking forward to that game.
Nice. Sweet. Okay. Let's see. Oh, this was about the spring game. Husker Chuck says it will be interesting to see if Alabama cancels theirs. They always draw the most fans. Yeah. If you don't do this for fans, I mean, you got to give them something else, right? In return, if you don't have the spring game.
Got something.
something. Got to do something. Okay. And then Pitt Snipe says, our depth, particularly O-line, is almost doubtful that they could make up multiple squads for the spring game. I thought that too, because of how many injured players we have on the offensive line. I don't even know if we could make up. We couldn't make up more than one squad.
Yeah.
Right now.
It'd be tough.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, I mean, that's a really good point. All right. And punt returns. Oh, we did that one already. And before it was a business, yes. And then lastly, okay. James Boardman says, I think that's why Phil Snow is an assistant head coach, is because of the way that Matt Rhule is being pulled in so many different directions. That, yeah, you need somebody as his right-hand man.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So you guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for all your comments. And I just wanted to tell you I appreciate each one of you for sharing your thoughts and love for the Huskers, and your voices matter in this community. Until next time, let's continue to lift each other up and go Big Red. Todd?
Go Big Red.
All right. There you go.